What's up, everybody? It's Corey, host of the Greaseball Podcast, back with another edition of the Performance Tiers. Finally caught up. It took fucking long enough, right? So, what better game to catch up with than the A.J. Brown revenge game, right? And arguably, I think the most complete game the Birds have put together all year long. It more or less whistle to whistle. You loved everything that you saw, right? And there wasn't a whole lot at all to complain about throughout this game against the Tennessee Titans. And, a lot of storylines coming to this game. The return of Jordan Davis, A.J. Brown's revenge game. So let's get to it. And if you're curious as to why the following tiers are named what they are, reference the video, the link above. And it will take you to the introduction of the performance tiers and how we came up with them and why they're named what they are. So, with that said, each and every week we begin with the Brian Dawkins tier. And again, we've seen this guy here many, many times, right? Why not? Some people would say he's the MVP of the league. I would agree. Jalen Hurts, QB1. And, when you look at it, 215 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns to go with a rushing touchdown in the first half alone. 215 passing yards. And, what you love to see is that after showing up against Green Bay and beating them on the ground, Jalen beat Tennessee through the air and looked awesome as a passer. And, what's most impressive to me about Hurts is how much he's improved as a passer. You see him connecting on deep throws and work in the middle of the field. And, he checks down when there's nothing downfield when it's necessary. And perhaps most importantly, he doesn't turn the ball over. I went from thinking this dude was a high-end backup entering the season to, look, now I've got complete confidence and trust in this motherfucker, okay? I don't get anxiety with every drop back like I did with Carson Wentz. And one of my favorite things about Jalen, juxtaposed to Carson, is that if a play's dead, he has no problem killing it. If there's yards to be had, he'll get every single one of them. He's truly a dual threat quarterback. He runs when it's necessary and passes when necessary. And the last 2 games, Green Bay and Tennessee, have been a perfect example of that. Who else in the Dawkins tier than his counterpart, his BFF? Hurts season hat, A.J. Brown with the revenge game. And you knew this one was circled on his calendar from the moment he was traded. He said as much. And, with 8 catches, 119 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the day for A.J., and this was the first game since the Pittsburgh game that he's really had an elite, a true wide receiver, 1-level performance. And it's no coincidence that both games were blowouts in favor of the Birds. The difference between the two, the Pittsburgh game and the Titans game, is that Tennessee is actually a good football team, and this game was personal to A.J. Brown. He came into this game with a massive fucking chip on his shoulder, and you knew that, Sirianni and Shane Steichen were going to make sure that 11-8 in this one. You knew that for a fact, and that's exactly what the fuck he did. Those two went nuts. We move on. Charlottesville represent to our guy, the Chris Long tier, with Devontae Smith. 5 catches for 102 yards and a touchdown, and it was Smith who drew first blood in this game. And with Goddard out, you've got plenty of targets up for grabs on the perimeter, and you see how effective a tandem he and A.J. Brown are, with both guys putting up over 100 yards and finding the end zone in this game. And, we went from not really having any receivers to you got a hell of an explosive dynamic duo between the two of them. And A.J. Brown opens everything up. It makes Devontae more effective to be able to reach his full potential and effectiveness in this offense. And you saw both of them have an outstanding game against the Titans. And that's why Devontae makes an appearance here in the Chris Long tier. Right along with the defense. And remember when the run defense was an issue for the Eagles? And going into this one, it's like, okay, we've got Derrick Henry on deck, who's the most bruising back in the NFL. And the D managed to hold him to just 30 yards on 11 carries. Now, look, as the game went on, Tennessee had to go pass heavy as the Birds' lead increased. So those 11 carries were, a lot of the Titans adjusting their game plan. But still, 30 yards for Derrick Henry, right? And you saw the defense, stay ahead of the chains. They created a lot of 3rd and longs for the Titans by stifling Henry. There weren't any turnovers on the day, but they weren't necessary either. And if anything, that's what you want to see, that it's not a defense that's reliant on creating those turnovers to be effective. 6 sacks. Josh Sweat led the way with 2. You had BG, Hassan Reddick, Fletch, and Hargrave also took down Tannehill on the day as well with 1 apiece. And then you got our guy, Reed Blankenship, who continued to ball out in the absence of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And the thing I love most about Blankenship is that he's such a good tackler. And I know we've said this before, but you got to credit Howie Roseman for bringing Blankenship in as an undrafted free agent. This is a move that has prevented this Eagles defense from being exposed on the back end without a safety in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson that was playing at an all-pro level. Small sample size for Blankenship, sure, but you absolutely love what you've seen so far, and it's a hell of a pickup by Howie Roseman. Moving on to the Nelson Aguilar tier, and I'm going to put Jordan Davis here. Now, this isn't entirely on him, right? And, this pick, and if you listen to the pod, I wasn't a fan of it initially. And I've since owned that I was wrong about that. But this pick and Jordan Davis himself are already so beloved as a player, not only because of his talent, but his personality as well. And not to mention, he was sorely missed while the Eagles got gashed on the ground week in and week out. You had Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph, and they absolutely helped. But you want the trenches have to be at full strength, right? As we said, that's where games are won and lost. Look at the Super Bowl year. So when this game was billed as the return of Jordan Davis against Derrick Henry of all people, it's easy to kind of get excited. But what you forget is that he's probably going to be on a snap count to slowly ingratiate him back into full-time action because you want him healthy for the playoffs. And you saw Davis kind of limp off the field at one point, and that's what you don't want to see, but I don't think it's panic-worthy, at least not yet, right? But at the same time, that's why it's smart to keep him on a snap count for a week or so that you don't have that long-term damage there. He's a big investment. You moved up for him in the first round. That's a guy that you want healthy in those trenches down the stretch. Finish it off every week with the Cheeks de la Cheeks, the worst of the worst, the Chip Kelly tier. And one obvious thing in this game, right? Again, very complete game, but the false starts. And, 3 in the first quarter, you make that 5 in the first half, and look, false starts are the single most frustrating penalty in football to me. I mean, I played and coached offensive line, but even if you didn't do either of those, right, it's common sense. You know the fucking snap count. And not only that, but the biggest mindfuck of all in this scenario is that this game was at the Link. You're the fucking home team. There's no crowd noise to intentionally throw you off. And there's no excuse for this. Just sloppy as fuck from an offensive line that's been absolutely essential to everything the Eagles have done this year. And that's just little discipline shit that has to get cleaned up. That type of shit cannot happen, though. Simple football 101 stuff. Next game against the Giants. And this is a big divisional game that, against a rival up the turnpike that nobody expected to be this good. And this game against the Giants isn't exactly a must-win, but you don't want to drop another game to an NFC East team and have those be potentially the only 2 blemishes, right? Especially now, the Birds control their own destiny. And the Tennessee game was a statement game, okay? Make no mistake about it. Mike Vrabel, he's got a blue-collar, tough team that's made life hard for contenders in the AFC, with Cincinnati and Kansas City both earning hard wins against them. But the Eagles bully the Titans, and hopefully this game will be a catalyst to wake their ass up, as we're officially in December now. So I'm not going to sit here and pound the table and say that this team is flat-out Super Bowl favorites, but I think right now in the NFC with San Francisco losing Jimmy Garoppolo, and you got Brock Purdy in there, who I liked at Iowa State a little bit, but they're not the same team. So without San Francisco, or with San Francisco without Jimmy G, rather, I think there's 3 teams in the NFC. Minnesota, Dallas, and the Eagles. And, look, you say what you want, but we've had the best record all year, and we still do. So, this is a big game, though. The Giants are a hell of a lot better than was expected, Brian Dable, if you've been a listener to the pod from day one, that was the guy. I'm not saying that I have buyer's remorse or that I don't want our guy Sirianni here. What a guy, right? Dable was the guy I wanted, though. Brian Dable's a hell of a coach. And you saw what he did with Josh Allen, and there's a reason this team has the record they do. You can say they're the worst, 8-9 win team or whatever it is in the league, but at the end of the day, they have that many wins, and they're up our ass in the NFC East. So this game is absolutely necessary to create that separation in the division and clinch early. And then you decide whether or not rust versus rest, right? So looking forward, big game, divisional game. Eagles-Giants games are always entertaining. What are your thoughts on the game against Tennessee? What do you think looking forward to this Sunday against the New York Giants? Let us know in the comments section below. If you like the video, hit the subscribe button for more Eagles content headed your way on your timeline. Tune into the podcast each and every Monday, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, also simulcast here on the YouTube page as well. Hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next time. As always, go Birds.